Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. I'm your host, Phil, joined by Logan and John, welcoming in another new year and closing in on episode 100. On today's episode, we are going to discuss Frankenstein projects, those that rise from a collection of dead parts and somehow become a living, breathing item. So I hope you enjoy today's show.
This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Magazine. Woodsmith Magazine has been the trusted source for all your woodworking information for over 40 years. From tips and techniques to furniture projects to shop projects, you'll find it all at Woodsmith Magazine. Subscribe today at woodsmith.com.
I want to say thanks to everybody who listens, and wanted to share a comment from one of our readers or viewers from one of the recent shows. I thought this one was kind of interesting. So we had, let's see, where was that? I love making gifts to give away for Christmas, but I tend to give away everything that I make all year round. My friends and family always appreciate the gesture and never notice the little flaws that are inevitable in every project. I take pride in what I'm able to produce and sweat the details because I know I'm giving it away and want the best for my loved ones. And I get the green light when purchasing tools and shop toys because my wife sees the results that come out of the shop. I just don't tell her how much they cost. And then also, first try watching, as soon as I heard Ryobi last time watching. You guys can't be serious using that garbage. Let me guess. Craftsman power tools in the shop?
Wow.
So there you go.
And let's be fair.
He hasn't heard the
I
Harbor
was going to
Freight
say,
episode yet.
somebody on Twitter tweeted at us about me liking Harbor Freight over Rockler, and I can't argue it. I thought it was fantastic. So
Yeah.
you know
what?
whatever.
You can't eat steak for every meal. Sometimes you got to eat a Big Mac. You know, you got to slum it.
Right.
So everything has
Yep.
its place. So
Yeah.
we're not
Yep.
snobs here. We'll use just about any tool.
No.
We don't care.
Right. So for today's episode, as we started the new year, I wanted to talk to you guys about projects that you recently did and about your process and thoughts in putting them together. So we'll start with Logan, and we'll put this in the show notes page so you can see what it is. But the cover project for the next issue of Popular Woodworking is Grill Island.
Let's call it
Small continent.
Yeah, let's call it
Subcontinent.
like a outdoor kitchen without a sink.
There we go.
Without a
Outdoor
sink, right?
kitchen. Right. Yeah. So what I really thought was kind of interesting was to see where your design went from concept to completion, and if you wouldn't mind just kind of talking about that.
Well, so yeah, I mean, let's be clear. I always know exactly how it's going to end up in my head. So, I mean, push your head, Phil. I mean, so I knew what I wanted the grill. It started as a grill cart. It was going to be a grill cart. And that was kind of the idea behind it because, I mean, yeah, it houses a grill. But as I started kind of, doing the napkin math and sketching it out and stuff, I'm like, okay, this thing's going to end up way bigger than I had planned on. Kind of, it migrated from grill cart to grill island to grill Antarctica. I mean, it's huge, right?
Right.
But that's fine because part of the narrative on it and part of the story that, of course, I have written the week before it goes to the printer, of course,
Right. Yeah.
Is that it's fairly modular because it has four pairs of legs, let's call it. There's front legs, there's back legs, there's four of each. And in between each set of legs is a, semi-modular unit. So one section is the grill holder. The next section is, on mine, a pull-out. If you think of like a pull-out garbage can in your kitchen, it's a pull-out container for charcoal. And the next section is a pull-out or a pair of double doors for storage, because it's a big green egg. It has a lot of accessories. It has like a smoking rack. It has a pizza stone. All that stuff I figured would go inside there and live in there, along with other things I use on my deck, like bird seed and all, fire starters for the grill and all that jazz. So it was kind of one of those things that, as I'm working on it, I'm kind of adding stuff, and I'm kind of making some decisions on the fly. And it's a little different than we do for Woodsmith, because Woodsmith, we have designers like John that model everything in CAD programs on the computer. And you can kind of put the parts together, see how it's going to work, dimension it out, and kind of make decisions there. Versus for some of the pop wood stuff, we're building it in photos. So I'm taking photos as I'm building this thing, and some of these decisions are game time decisions. It's like, hey, you know what? I think that's going to be too big. We're lopping 2 inches off of it. So we lop 2 inches off of it.
Right.
So, it's one of those things that, did it turn out exactly how I was expecting? Yes. It's bigger than I planned on, but I made those decisions as I was building it. And I have room for it. And somebody could decide if they have room for it or not. It was one of those things. We've done almost 100 podcasts. I'm sure we've talked about this, but like the way we show building stuff in Popwood, in Woodsmith, in ShopNotes, in any of our magazines, that's not set in stone. It's a good basis. It's a good foundation for somebody to take and build it themselves. And we fully expect and fully want somebody to customize it. It's same thing with this grill cart. Like, maybe somebody doesn't have a Kamado style grill, which is like a big green egg. Maybe they have a, 2-burner Weber Genesis grill, but they want that extra work surface. Or maybe if people get the magazine, they'll see on the cover photo, I have the grill sit in there, and then I also have one of my pizza ovens setting on top of it. Like, maybe somebody wants a pizza oven cart for outside. Great.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I don't necessarily want somebody to build this verbatim. I want somebody to do exactly what I did as I was building it, have an idea, see my dimensions that I gave them, and rework it, retool it, and make it their own and make it fit for what they want. So.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of what I wanted to get from you, is to see that, because I know when you first started talking about it with us, you wanted it as a cart, you could roll it around, for wherever it was going to live at your place. And that, I think, plays a big role in it, is that you were envisioning it for a specific place, your house. Yep. So it had to suit certain needs that you had for that particular unit. Like, you wanted it to hold your Kamado grill. Ideally, you wanted it to roll around. But when you start going off of, well, if I need this to hold the grill, it needs to be at least this wide and this deep.
Yes.
And then if I start and then when you say, now I want to have a charcoal hopper, because what's a grill like that without charcoal, without having to, walk back into the garage to get it or whatever. And then you wanted a couple of extras, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, this thing got a lot bigger than a cart.
Well, and yes, and so there was that, it's funny because you're right. Initially, I wanted this thing to roll. And looking at it, hindsight, I'm like, what the heck was I thinking? Like, there's no way this thing's going to roll. It's huge. Now, that is because my grill happens to be pretty big. If you had a smaller grill, like if you had one of the, I don't know what the big green egg sizes are, but like the big green egg mini, I'm going to make that up. It's fairly, it's much smaller than the one I have. Looking at the cart with my grill in it, I don't think I could have made it much smaller. There's about 5 inches in front of the grill of, top, and there's about 5 inches behind it, but that's taken up by the hinge as well. So I don't think I could have done it. And in my scenario where this grill outdoor kitchen is going to live, I have no need to move it. I don't need to roll it anywhere. So,
right.
But that's my scenario. Somebody else may have their grill in the garage and they want to be able to roll it out into the driveway to cook on it. in that instance, throw casters on it. Don't make it as big as I did. Make it smaller, but put casters on it. And then you can roll in and out. So, it's one of those things. It's just like, you got to tailor it. You got to take what we give you and run with it.
Yeah. And I guess what I also liked about it, kind of in hindsight, as I was looking at how you built it, it's almost built like a timber framed barn.
Yeah.
In the sense that you have these frames that support, the roof and then the the sides of the barn, and it's just those things. I think they're called like bents. So if you just keep adding bents, then your barn gets longer.
Exactly what it is.
In the same way that your stand there is just a series of bents. So like you said, somebody doesn't have that grill. You pull it out, you can make a rectangular opening in it and drop in a big cooler. And now you have like a party central for, buffets or, put drawers or doors on both sides of it, just to whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny. I was kind of being facetious when I said it to you, Phil, the other day when we were both in the shop. I was spraying this outdoor kitchen with outdoor Danish oil. And it's a new oil from a company called Nova. That I really like it. I'm going to probably do a review on this oil because I found it very easy to use. But I yelled out, the best thing about making an outdoor project is it doesn't have to be finished to the level of a furniture project, because dang well that after 4 months of sitting outside and getting rained on, it's going to be fuzzy anyways. So it's like sand it to 120 grit, call it good. Whereas my kitchen table I'm sitting at, I sand it at 600 grit. Not going to do that to a piece of cedar. And it was another one of those decisions I made initially. This is something else that changed from concept to completion. Initially, I wanted to make the entire thing out of Iroko, which is what we did the top for this picnic table I have out here. My couch that's out here on the deck is teak. And Iroko is a pretty close substitute for teak. But the cost wasn't going to be that much more. It was more expensive to do it out of Iroko. But what I liked about being able to do it out of cedar is you can just drive to Menards or Lowe's or Home Depot and you can buy cedar 4x4s. So everything on the cart I'm still calling it a cart. Everything on the outdoor kitchen is either cedar 4x4s, cedar 2x4s, cedar 2x6s, or cedar dog ear fence pickets. So it's all, construction grade lumber that's just happens to be cedar. So, and we've said it before, working with softwoods is enjoyable. Routing 3/4 inch deep mortises in one pass with a 1/2 inch or 3/8 inch bit. Oh, nothing compares. Straight through.
Right. Now, the project that I'm thinking about for you, John, that I'd like you to talk about a little bit is kind of the flagship project for what, for most people, is like the current issue of Woodsmith. And it's wall unit shelving system. And where Logan's doesn't necessarily say modular when you look at it until you see like the internal construction of it, yours by definition is modular.
Yeah. It was interesting to hear Logan talk about the way he kind of started with point A, the start, and had a vision of the finish, and then comparing that to the way we do things at Woodsmith when we design it out and get full drawings to our builders, and doing it that way, which is kind of hard because it's like you have to have it all thought out on paper and worked out, and you're handing it off to somebody else to build, and you're not there to explain kind of the meaning of different things. But yeah, definitely when I'm building a project for myself, I do it the way Logan does, where it's like I got point A and I got the finish at point B, and it kind of is, it's not a straight line. It's kind of zigzags and circles and kind of figure out as I go. But yeah, it's definitely different drawing it all out first and handing it off to somebody else. But So what you were talking about is it's a modular, I'd say kind of mid-century modern wall shelving unit. Has uprights. Trying to think. If I had
uprights that are attached to the wall.
I think they're about 4 feet apart. Or no, wait, about
30,
32 inches.
32 inches. I wrote the article,
apart.
John.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Logan, correct me. So in theory, those are hitting studs, but not necessarily because you don't know where studs are going to land on walls.
Besides
anyway,
these three right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's right,
Hold on.
ladies.
Where's our sound effects? Hold on.
Yes. Thank you for that. So it's got uprights with T-nuts, approximately 6 inches apart or whatever. And then so it's all modular. Then it's got shelves that fit on those uprights and boxes. So it was kind of tough designing that because there's so many different ways we could have gone. I mean, basically you either have flat shelves with brackets or some sort of box, and the boxes that we had some had drawers in them, some had doors. Could have done open boxes or sliding doors or glass doors or all kinds of different things. So kind of what Logan was mentioning is kind of a jumping off point for other people to look at, and how can I change this and make it my own, and the general construction techniques and whatnot is you kind of learn from the techniques and then make it your own from there. So
yeah, well, the one thing I liked about that project, John, and like I said, I wrote it. There's a couple of things I liked about it. First, it was walnut, and we all know I'm a sucker for that dark, luscious wood. Second is that it's definitely mid-century, but it's not like super heavy mid-century.
Right.
It definitely has some mid-century vibes. I'm not a huge mid-century fan, but it definitely has some mid-century vibes, just enough. And the other thing I like is that project you could tailor to fit any sort of space that you had. Mm-hmm. So you could put it in a living room as almost an entertainment center. You could put it in an office as a desk because there is a desk section of it. You could put it in a bedroom as almost storage, if you did drawers in it. I mean, you could really fit it in any space you really wanted to.
Yeah, it could be a library area, it could be a media area, kind of whatever you wanted. So I think we had it more propped for a computer desk and books and knick-knacky stuff. But you can really go a lot of different directions with it. And that's what it was fun to design, but it was also difficult because it was so broad that it's what direction are we wanting to go here? Where do you draw the line as far as this is what we're doing, and not trying to do too much, too many different variations.
Right, because I think one of the initial briefs on it was that it was a simple wall shelf, which it very well could be. You build it just, a single module wide, and you can have a shelf. You could do an uppercase, a shelf, and a desk, and be done with it, and that's it. So it can be relatively simple. Or, there were a lot of wall unit things that were built in the 50s and 60s, and even now are contemporary versions that have, any number of variations on what you can put on those wall standards.
Yeah, and so kind of like you were saying with the outdoor kitchen is that, you have your uprights. You can do 2 uprights and you have it 32 inches wide, or you can do 64 or keep going. You just add another upright and you can go as wide as you want. And so kind of make it kind of fit your space. So,
and to be honest with you, that would be a super easy way. We've recently talked about changing some stuff around in our office and making kind of a library, for lack of a better term, in our offices here in town. And that would be a super easy way to do library shelving. If you did just a bunch of those uprights and a bunch of the shelves with it, you could absolutely line a wall. which would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So the only thing, and there's no way to get around it, there's a lot of holes to drill in those uprights.
Yes.
Man, there's a lot of holes in them.
Yeah, I think it would ended up being almost like 100 T-nuts in 4 uprights. So
Yep, there's a lot.
So a lot of holes, line boring, getting them perfectly evenly spaced and located, and so I didn't have to do it. So it's easy. It's easy to do in the modeling program. You just draw one hole and then repeat.
So that's one thing I was going to ask you, John. Like you said, when I build a project, point A, point B, and then zigzagging in between. Mm-hmm. And the only person I have to justify my decisions to are myself and my wife. Do you find that you have to justify some of your decisions to the builders ever?
Yeah. It used to be a lot worse when we had a lot more. We had design meetings like every week, and everybody's in there asking, "Why did you do it this way?" Or "Why did you do it that way?"
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes the answer is just like, "That's just the hardware I found in the drawer." There's not any reason that's there. It's just that's what I had laying around.
Which, to be fair, sometimes happens when we build stuff too.
Right, and that's just real life. Or like, why did you use oak for this piece? It's like, I don't know. I found a nice piece of oak in the pile, and so that's what I used. So sometimes that's just the answer. It's just because. But sometimes there's reasons why, and it's funny when we're building projects from past plans for the TV show, and we're like, well, why did they do it this way? This is dumb. We're going to do it our own way. And we get to the end, and it's like, oh, that's why they did it that way.
Yeah.
And then you're fixing things, and
dang it.
So yeah, sometimes there's reasons, and sometimes there's not. So, but yeah, there's always justifying to, the builders or whoever's writing the article. So, and that kind of helps too. I mean, there's might be stuff that you didn't think of, and you have more eyes looking at it and kind of work things out as you go. So,
yeah. No, and I think that was, because I wanted to talk to you, John, about that project, and then seeing Logan over the course of the last few weeks work on his project is just, these are two very different looking pieces, but the path they got there are very similar in that they are alive, in a sense, that there were decisions made because of certain factors, and there were other decisions made because at some point it has to stop. It's like chips and salsa at a Mexican restaurant.
No, they just keep bringing them.
Yeah. It's like, how do you stop? Do they stop bringing them, or do you die, or
do they kick you out of the restaurant?
Yeah.
We're cutting you off.
Yeah. So that's some of the good thing about having the deadlines for the magazine, is because you could tinker around ideas forever, and then nothing would ever get done. So you get to a point where you just have to sail the ship and hopefully bring it into the port at the end.
Well, and
we have page counts too that we're trying to hit. And there's
that was the other funny thing about that, because when we started out, I was like, oh, it's just a simple wall shelf, and it was going to be 2 to 4 page article, and then I got it all designed out and handed off, and they're like, that's going to need some more pages.
Yeah.
So.
And me, who requested to only write the short articles, got one of the bigger ones. I'm like, what the heck, guys?
Sorry about that.
Yeah. See, I thought that the question from Phil was going to be about the part of oak, or the bundle of oak parts that were shrink wrapped together that have lived in the studio for a while that we just uncovered.
That's my project from December 2008. That's
You're
how
almost
far
there.
it got.
Almost
That's how
there,
far it got.
John.
It is. It just needs to be assembled. It's all there. So, yeah, it's been around the block a few times, but.
So, Phil, you have one that you've been working on too, right? Like, you are doing the same journey, and I was kind of poking fun at you yesterday about it, but you picked it up again.
Yeah, I have. This is no surprise to any of the podcast listeners who have been following for a while. Is I'm working on. Here's the ultimate story of it. I'm looking for a really cool, versatile slot mortiser for my shop to simplify the mortising part of joinery. Right. However, I am too cheap for said mechanical marvels that do exist, because there's the multi-router and the panto router and the, whatever. So, and I enjoy making tools, whether they're hand tools or power tools or, complicated jigs. Part of my inspiration for this is, and this is really, I apologize to everybody who's about to hear this. There was a tool company back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, Inca Power Tools, that have a very devoted cult following. Very similar to the people who still drive Gremlins and AMC Pacers, because they're about the same era. And the Inca table saw was a tilting top table saw. So the arbor doesn't tilt on it, the top does. So if you're going to, cut your bevels by tilting the whole top. What that allowed you to do, though, is joined to the arbor on one side is a slot mortiser attachment, basically like a drill chuck or a router chuck sticking off the side of the saw cabinet. And there was this really simple sliding table, could be adjusted in height, and then just a couple of levers to bring the workpiece into the bit and then slide it back and forth. If you search online Inca table saw, you'll find several folk out there that have restored them and used them and whatever. What I like about it is that the table isn't very large, and I know that it's part of the table saw, but that housing has, to me, a very compact feel to it. To the whole point that I've muscled into Chris Fitch to design a horizontal mortiser for the magazine that we wrote about, or that I wrote the article for, probably about a year and a half ago, maybe, plus or minus. It's a super cool mortiser. I used it on my workbench project. Chris has done a couple of videos on it that you'll be able to find on our YouTube channel, and it's really sweet. It's just bigger than I want. So I thought that I could take the concepts of that slot mortiser, scale them down a little bit, and have something that I thought would be really cool. So I came up with a version, and you guys saw it, that I had practically done, and I did a couple of test mortises on it, and it was like, I had some slop in a couple of different components, and the resulting mortises weren't as smooth as I wanted. So I've evaluated it, and part of my issue is that I've tried to ask this thing to do too much. I wanted it to handle kind of like the everyday mortises that you would do in furniture projects. So 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch size, mostly in 3/4 inch to 1 inch thick material. But occasionally I build larger scale things. So I thought, well, ultimately it'd be super cool if I could get this to center a mortise in 3 inch thick material. So I need like essentially 1.5 inches of adjustability in there. But honestly, how often am I doing that? Not very often. So I think what I'm doing is adding too many requirements to this thing for something that I want to be basically about as simple as attaching a biscuit joiner to a shop-made table. So I'm going to do, I've kind of disassembled my whole thing, and I'm trying to distill it down into basic capabilities, which, to be honest, is going to take care of 99% of my projects that I need. For those other ones, I'll work on something else. I'll use a different
basic capabilities
approach.
Being centering a mortise in 3/4 inch stock. Okay.
Yeah, I think what I had 3/4 inch, I probably 1 inch
Okay.
material. I've tried to decide if I want to bring it up so that I can do 1.5 inches. If I were doing 2x material, if I was doing an outdoor project.
Sure.
Because I really like doing loose tenon joinery. I think it's a really straightforward system that really matches my head and approach. I can just do 2 identical mortises and then make a bunch of tenon stock. Super easy. Bam. Mortise and tenon. So rather than trying to get 5-inch wide mortises and centered in 3-inch material, if I focus on making 2-inch wide mortises max, centered on inch material max, that takes care of a ton of
90% of stuff. And to be honest with you, making those bigger mortises, to me, that's an easier process with a straight edge guide or with an edge guide and a router than making short, little, narrow mortises. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you got more support.
Right.
This is coming from me to just build this outdoor kitchen. Big mortises, you got a lot of, with big stock, you got a lot of support for the base. You got a lot of room, where making mortises on narrow stock, small mortises, there's a lot less room for error. So,
right. And I had done I made a cooler cart for a friend of mine as a Christmas gift. Actually, I think it was the coolest cart. John said that one long ago, so I'm just gonna. Yeah. Anyway, so it's a cooler cart, and I used loose tenon joinery on that, and it was a bunch of, I think the legs, I did white oak. The legs were like 2 inches, but a lot of it was 3/4 inch material, and I made a jig for my plunge router. But with all the various parts in there, it was a ton of mortises, and it was just a lot of clamping the jig in place and lining it up and getting the router and clamping that piece into a vise to hold it in place, route the mortise, unclamp the jig, unclamp the workpiece, repeat 6,000 times. So I'm looking for something that, you essentially program the router through the table and depth stops to do all those things. So it's just put the piece in, clamp it in place, route the mortise. And you pop it out, and you can do a bunch of identical mortises pretty easily using stops and things like that. That I just wasn't practical for me using a handheld plunge router and a jig. So there you go. Short story long.
okay. Well, we'll stay tuned.
Yeah, so that's my goal for the early part of this year, is to wrap that up and maybe find something that kind of distills all those things down into a compact package.
And then knowing Phil, after he finishes that, the next goal is to get Christmas presents done.
Right. Yeah, you got to start them early, man. You just got to start them as early as you possibly can. Otherwise, your family thinks that woodworking smells like lacquer.
Yeah. Which it does, doesn't it?
So speaking of woodworking and Christmas presents, I admitted in the last podcast that I hadn't finished a couple of my projects. And so one that I'm very close to wrapping up is a clock that we did a few years ago, both on the TV show and in the magazine. So I decided to make one out of walnut, and I have some really cool, I don't even remember where these pieces came from, if that was stuff from you, Logan, or somewhere else. But anyway, I think the case work is really nice.
It definitely looks air
And
dried, so
yeah, it's got a Craftsman wide overhanging top that I still need to work on a little bit. But the bottom part was designed around art tile that you would put in there. But since I've been dabbling in carving recently, I made a couple of tile blanks from some soft wood that I'm going to do some kind of simple incised carving on it to do like a custom tile. So I think that'll be kind of fun to try out, and just as another way to take an existing project and make it my own. Because I think the original one we did out of white oak, we used a tile from Matawi Tiles, which is an endless source of delight because they just have super cool tiles.
Yeah, small area like that, a small tile like that would be a great place to maybe introduce some intarsia or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was ready on that
be
one.
great.
You can see it on my
That would be
face
a
that I was
great-
just gonna like fire
Yeah.
off something.
I could. But to be honest, though, I was just thinking that would be a good area to try your hand at a little Kumiko action.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's one of those things where, don't be limited by what you see in a
Yeah.
photo about a project. Like, I'm into trying some carving. Kumiko would be really cool. Yeah. Scroll saw or Intarsia
Would be a little bit less
design in
cool.
there would be super cool. Or if you knew somebody who painted
Yeah.
or drew, you could just do or maybe a family memento or something like that you could
Grandpa's ashes.
put in there. Right. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
I didn't even know your grandpa smoked.
Anyway. There you go. You get like 170 cigarette butts and you make a little
Yep.
frame and then you just pour
Oh,
epoxy in
that's
there.
gross.
And then because it wouldn't
No,
smell
not
at
at
all. Not at all.
On that
There you go.
note,
Yes.
Way to start out the year strong, guys.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, we take a couple of weeks off of podcasting and we're ready to go.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say I do appreciate the people who have written in asking about our holiday absence, making sure that the ShopNotes podcast does continue. And for the haters out there, I'm surprised you've made it this far through the episode. But yes, we
I
are
was going to
still
say, was it
continuing.
people like emailing in saying, "Hey, you guys finally give up?" Like,
Poking us with a proverbial.
100 episodes in, you guys finally quit? Jesus.
They just poked us with a proverbial stick to see if we were
Yep.
still alive.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's got to happen. So, you guys have any projects on the horizon,
Yeah, I do.
either home or at work, that you want to talk about?
I mean, I have that stupid built-ins downstairs in my wife's office that I still haven't finished. A year later,
Right.
well, it's been 3 years now since I started them. I'm working on catching up to John over here.
Yeah.
No, I think for the next issue of Popwood, I'm going to do something that was titled. This is coming from an antique store I was in a couple of months ago. There was something titled a watchmaker's cabinet. Now, I don't know that that's what it was for a fact, but when I Google watchmaker's cabinet, similar style cabinets show up. Basically, it's a chest of drawers that's, I don't know, let's call it 24 inches wide, 12 inches deep, maybe a little deeper, and 18 inches tall. 4 drawers, very plain, very like craftsman or mission style, but they're just very shallow drawers. And when I opened it up, it had a bunch of dividers in it. So it looks like it may have held like watch parts at some time or parts of some kind. I have also found that a similar style is also people also call like seamstress cabinets is a very similar style.
Yeah. Yeah, like a spool, cabinet almost.
Exactly. But I'm going to build one of those for the next issue of Popwood, and it's going to house my carving tools.
Okay.
I've gotten a large enough collection now that I need somewhere to keep them. I'm going to size it to fit those. But one of those things, again, the bones are there. Do what you will with the project when it's done, or build it to suit.
Sure.
So I think that one will be next. I recently got my first load of white oak out of the kiln. Thank you, Bob Reynolds. I'm pretty sure he listens to the podcast. But John is right now working on some props for our next episode of the TV show using said white oak, and it's actually pretty nice stuff. Like, I knew it was nice when I cut it, and I cut it out of Jefferson, Iowa. It was really nice when I cut it, but you kind of forget what it looks like, and as stuff air dries outside, it kind of grays and weathers and stuff, and it doesn't look that great. And I'm sure when I unloaded my truck, John was like, "What the heck did you bring me?" It's actually pretty nice stock once you clean it up. So I think I'm going to use some of that, and I think it'll be kind of cool. So that's the next project. We'll see where the journey takes us, though.
Yeah, as I've been going through that
Yeah.
and getting it cleaned up, I feel like a wood butcher, like breaking it all down and then get it cleaned up. It's like, ooh, look at this marbling in here. And, you know, you really get to see all the bits and pieces. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's bur oak, which is part of
Correct.
the white oak family, so to speak. But sometimes white oak has kind of that gray cast to it, and this stuff has a really
Nutty.
really cool
Yeah.
nut brown color to it.
Yep. So it's interesting. And again, I've said this 1,000 times and I'll say 1,000 times more. That's one of the things I love about having a sawmill and being able to cut up stuff. It's like you can't go out and commercially buy white oak. Although the Forestry Service allows bur oak. I said white oak. You can't go out and commercially say, hey, I want to buy some bur oak. You can't do that. But
Right.
the Forestry Service allows bur oak. It's classified as white oak, and the Forestry Service allows it to be sold as white oak. So you may occasionally run into a patch of bur oak at a lumber yard. You wouldn't necessarily know it, but it's not a very common tree to be turned into lumber, at least furniture lumber, because it's, as we were talking about the other day, Phil, you said it's kind of a savanna tree. It's one of those trees that grows out in the middle of nowhere. It branches really quickly, so there's not a whole lot of saw log on it per se, and it's going to be fairly knotty. But super fun, super cool. I'm excited to mess with it. And I have 3 or 4 more logs here to cut that are bur oak still. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Sweet. John?
I have, now that I'm starting to settle into our house, I have like a whole like list of projects, and now I'm just trying to figure out what can I like squeeze into the magazine and have somebody else build it for me and then like do it on company time.
Right.
So that's just like a whole mess of stuff, just trying to work out.
It's called multitasking, I
right.
think is what you're...
Exactly. I don't know, or exploitation. I don't know what the right word is, but
Yeah. It's a gray line.
So yeah, just sorting it all out before I dig in. And then apparently I have a pile of project parts that are ready to assemble that have been floating around. Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
Curing.
Now that we're clearing out, like cleaning up around here, we're starting to come across all the stuff that I've hidden on shelves and under stairs. And so.
Yeah. People don't often know this, that John has a certain magpie quality to him, that he finds little treasures and kind of tucks them away in different places. So,
Yep. Treasures, sure.
So, all right. I think that wraps it up for another episode of the Shop Notes Podcast. We'd love to hear your questions, comments, and smart remarks. You can do so on our YouTube channel, where you can watch the Shop Notes Podcast and leave comments there. You can also send them to woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Any questions, we sometimes collect those into mailbag episodes, and we can do Q&A sessions on that as well. Or if you have a specific topic that warrants a little longer conversation, that would be appreciated as well. Another favor that I have of all of you listening is to rate and review the Shop Notes Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. That helps us to get connected to other woodworkers like you who would enjoy listening to this show. So if you could do that, I would greatly appreciate it, and we can read some of those reviews at a later date. Otherwise, we'll see you next time, everybody, for the Shop Notes Podcast. Bye. This episode of the Shop Notes Podcast is brought to you by Woodsmith Plans. You'll find nearly 1,000 plans covering everything that you'd want to build, from furniture projects to gift projects, kitchen accessories, workshop projects and jigs, and more. Find your next project at woodsmithplans.com.